Coming up today on Second Opinion with Dr. Ebony Jade Hilton, sickle cell anemia. What is it and why does it disproportionately impact African Americans? We'll explain everything you need to know and discuss the bill to support it moving through Congress. Also, are you feeling off balance? From what you're drinking to what you're putting on your body, you could be causing your hormones to be out of sync. We talked to the Hormone Lady to help you reset. Plus, should you put a ring on it? New research links marriage to lower risk of cancer. We break down how I do can impact your health and the hidden weight behind many women carrying in their relationship, this invisible labor. How the mental and emotional load could also be impacting your health. Real conversations, real issues, real answers, right now on Second Opinion. First up, sickle cell. Now, sickle cell anemia is an inherited blood disorder caused by a genetic mutation forcing red blood cells into a rigid crescent-like shape. And more than 90% of people who have sickle cell disease in the United States are non-Hispanic, Black, or African American. And joining me now is Dr. Lakiea Bailey, founder of the Sickle Cell Community Consortium, the largest Black-led sickle cell organization in the country. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Bailey.
Thank you for having me. So glad to be here.
Yeah. Now I think everyone has kind of heard of sickle cell anemia, but I think unless you have sickle cell anemia, you don't really know what it actually means. So can you explain to our viewers exactly what is sickle cell and how it impacts the body?
Oh, absolutely. It's a genetic illness. So I do like to tell people, because there's this misconception that it is a Black disease. It is not a Black disease. It is a blood disease. Mm-hmm. It is a genetic illness that affects the blood, a single point mutation in the DNA. People have them all the time, but this time it's in a point that affects how the protein hemoglobin folds. It makes it sticky, so they all stick together, and it misshapes the red blood cells. Those red blood cells then get caught in the tiny little blood vessels, and it leads to organ death and damage, vaso-occlusive crisis, which is incredibly painful, and a lot of other systemic health concerns. But it affects anybody that has blood. Now, you see it primarily in Black and brown people because of the malaria effect. If you have malaria with sickle cell disease, it makes it harder to die from malaria. You're not immune. I know some of you think that people with sickle cell are not immune to malaria, but it does make it harder to die from malaria. And so what happens is, in history, individuals in malaria-prone areas, they died in childhood. So those that lived long enough to have children were those that carried the sickle gene, who then passed it on. So you see it primarily in Black and brown people, but you also have Italians, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white people, all races can have sickle cell disease. And I say it all the time, it's a blood disease, not a Black disease.
I think that is very key, because oftentimes we can go in and have blinders on and misdiagnosing people, and that can lead to very severe health consequences. Now,
absolutely.
As I understand it, Dr. Bailey, you yourself was diagnosed with sickle cell disease. Was it around the age of 3?
I was.
Were you having symptoms at that time? And if not, how were you diagnosed so early? And how has that impacted you personally?
I was having symptoms. I was diagnosed at 3. I had my first sickle crisis at 5. Now, my mother noticed something was wrong. She went from doctor to doctor. She was actually accused of having Munchausen syndromes. They said she was doing something to hurt me for the attention. Finally, we landed in the office of Dr. Simpson, a young Black doctor who had just graduated and come to Gary, Indiana to set up his practice. He recognized this is not a woman hurting her child. These are the symptoms of a young person with sickle cell disease. He sent me to Valparaiso, another city in Indiana, to have me diagnosed. They said, oh, she'll be all right. This is sickle cell, but she'll probably be fine, never crisis. So at 5, I had my first crisis. Now, I'm old. I should be notified at birth if you're younger a certain age, or your child that you just had or had recently has sickle cell disease. You will be notified at birth for the sickle cell disease and the trait. But back then in the 70s, people didn't know. And so you didn't know until you had your first crisis or something happened to lead to diagnosis.
Mm. And can you describe to people, when you say crisis and this severe pain, what does it actually feel like? Because, we all have pains, right? We have headaches. We have, you may fall and you scrape your knee. But sickle cell crisis doesn't feel that way. Am I correct?
You're so right. It is a difficult thing to explain. The best thing I can do is that all of my friends that have had children say a crisis is worse than childbirth. In fact, many of my friends, one that had twins, she was crowning before she realized that this was labor because she was expecting the pain to be similar, to come close to a crisis. And her children, her first twin was actually crowning before she was like, oh, I'm in labor. And this is the same story that most people with sickle cell tell. I've also spoken to many men who have had heart attacks, and they didn't realize they were having a heart attack because the pain was not as severe as a sickle crisis. And so it does kind of throw us off when it comes to our perception of pain because it is such a devastatingly painful illness.
Mm. And it's so unfortunate because you hear many patients with sickle cell report not being taken seriously when they seek care for this pain, right? How do we address the bias in the healthcare system and help to rebuild that trust and get the sickle cell patient, this community of people, the care they actually need?
That is such a big question. And I can't say I truly know the answer to that. If there were 1, 10, 100, 1,000 of us that had bad experiences, I could say it was an outlier. But there are tens of thousands of us that all go in seeking care and are treated horribly. This speaks to a culture in the medical field, in that area, in medical care in general, that this is a culture of beliefs. There are still individuals that genuinely graduate medical school believing Black people feel less pain. Mm-hmm. And it's not just sickle cell, it is across the board. There have been many studies that show the undertreatment of pain in those of the Black and brown races, and in women particularly. And so when you combine that, I am not certain. I do think it has a lot to do with education. And meet me right now. Meet me when I am Dr. Lakiea Bailey having a conversation with you. Not when I am in so much pain. I am talking to God in my head, telling him, I'm not certain I want to live this way. Take me, heal me, kill me. When that is where I am mentally, that's not the moment to meet me because I am not at my best. I am in so much pain, I can barely function. So I do think meeting us here, overcoming bias, racial bias is very systemic in the medical field, leading with that, and then hitting them while they're still students. Because I've known people to come out of nursing school, brand new, already with the opinion, sickle cell people don't take their medicines. They're non-compliant. They just want drugs. And you are a brand new nurse, and you already believe those things about us. That has to be addressed from the very beginning.
From the very beginning, and especially, like I said, you were 3-year-old when this was diagnosed. We have babies that may not be able to even express what this pain is feeling like to them, and how do we get them through it? Now, we've seen promising developments like gene therapy and new medications that are bringing about possibly a treatment and or a cure for sickle cell disease. Have you heard of any of these things happening, and how do you feel about this new advancement?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I'm very excited about it. I'm tentatively quite hopeful. We do have a lot of things that are happening now. Multiple companies are working on gene therapy. We have on the market now, accessible. The price tag is $2 million. I can't afford $2 million treatment. And so many of us do it or try to access it through a research study. Right now, it's a fantastic option, but it is out of reach for the average person living with sickle cell disease. So that is our next step. There are also disease modifying treatments. Not all of them are gene therapy, gene editing. And not everyone is going to be comfortable having their genes edited. And that's viable. To tell a person it's not viable or you just don't want to be cured because they don't want their genes edited is ridiculous. Right. Not everyone's going to want that. But for now, it is a fantastic option. I have seen amazing cures, because you can still pass the disease on, and all the damage that sickle cell already created isn't going anywhere. It is only stopping future damage. So I say cure lightly, but I have seen fantastic results in that space.
Well, that's fantastic. You know, we're making some movements on the clinical side of things, but also on the policy side of things, right? You're the founder of Sickle Cell Community Consortium. Can you talk to us about what that group, what does it do? What is the foundation of what your mission is? And then also talk to us about the Sickle Cell Disease Protection Act that's happening in Georgia.
Fantastic. Yes, amazing questions. So first off, the Sickle Cell Community Consortium is a little bit different. I had this lofty idea of creating almost like a United Nations, but for sickle cell organizations, where all these organizations and advocacy leaders would come together, retain their individual autonomy. So we have no say over how they run their organizations, who's on their board, nothing like that, but partner with all of these different individuals to identify the problems, needs, and gaps in the sickle cell space, and then collectively create solutions for them. So we now have over 100 partnered organizations, most domestic, but over 30 international, as well as independent patient caregiver advocates. These are people who are not part of an organization, but are advocacy and opinion leaders in their own right. We have just wrapped up our 10th Leadership Summit. We bring them together once a year in Atlanta, Georgia, to identify what are the priorities, what's going on, and how do we fix it. I tell people all the time, when you're living with a chronic illness, helplessness is learned. You can't do this, you can't do that. But if helplessness can be learned, helplessness can be unlearned. And our goal is to bring people together and to hand them the tools to creating the change they wish to see in this space. Now, I am so excited about that second question as well, because this was championed by Representative Omari Crawford in partnership with MTS Sickle Cell Foundation. And what they have been doing in Georgia is championing this, which it has now passed both sides of the House, and it is on Kemp's desk, governor's desk, to be signed, which means that is the only step barring this. Once it is signed, it is going to improve coverage for over 15,000 people living with sickle cell disease in this state. It is going to expand coverage to all those additional people. It is going to mandate that Medicaid cover sickle cell treatment, and that the state reviews the treatments that Medicaid is covering for those living with sickle cell disease. And there's a lot of other things, but this means that in this state, there will be more people that will be able to get access to treatment, access to care than have been in the past, and that Medicaid will be reviewed. What drugs are you not allowing them to take? Why? What's the rationale? And it also mandates that those living with sickle cell disease, that our voices, that we must be consulted and have an opportunity to leave public comments so that our treatment can be improved with our voices central to that process.
That all just gave me chills to think about how many people that can help. And Dr. Bailey, I just want to thank you for bringing attention to the realities of both living with sickle cell disease and also being an advocate for the community. If there's someone who's listening, we know that 50% of all Black, actually I think it's up to 60% of all Black people live in the South. And we know heavily those states are states that are devoid of healthcare and access, right? If they're not in Atlanta and they want to look towards something on your social media or some website, where can they go to get information about resources for those who are living with sickle cell disease?
You can always come to our website, sicklecellconsortium.org. And if you're living with sickle cell disease and you need a space to share your ideas or to be around others with the disease, to find out all these different events that are happening in this space, both locally and throughout the country, you can go to sicklecellevents.org. So find information on our website, find information about events near you at that second website. And then, of course, we also have what we call the Warrior Network. We consider it like a Netflix for sickle cell, and all of the different videos, all of the education can be found at the network as well. And all of that is hyperlinked or showcased on our main website. So if you remember one, that would be sicklecellconsortium.org. And if you want to see the events, you can always go to sicklecellevents.org.
All right, sicklecellconsortium.org. Thank you so much, Dr. Bailey.
Thank you.
And coming up next, we're taking a look at how birth control, hair relaxers, and stress can throw our bodies completely off balance. Still to come, we're talking to Hormone Lady. Stay with us.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
Now, hormones are an important and essential part of human existence. And while your body normally carefully balances its hormones, having too little or too much can lead to health problems by disrupting the body's natural processes. And joining me now is Esosa Edosomwan, a certified nutrition specialist and founder of Staying Ageless Coaching and UMI. She's also known as the Hormone Lady. Welcome, Edosomwan.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Now, you work with people's hormones across the spectrum, but can you tell our audience what exactly are hormones? We talk about them all the time, right? But what are hormones and which are the ones that you typically see get imbalanced in your practice?
Yeah, so hormones are so important for life. They actually are chemical messengers. If you think about them almost like sending email, like hormones basically send messages to our cells and tell them how to function, how our body should function. So they keep us in homeostasis or balance. And so when our hormones are out of whack, everything is out of whack. And our hormones are made by our glands, our endocrine glands, and they're all over the body. So we have a ton of different hormones. And so to pinpoint just one specific hormone that gets out of balance, there's so many things that get out of balance for people: insulin, estrogen, progesterone, the adrenal hormones, too much cortisol. So there's so much going on with hormones, but when we get it right, people feel amazing.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will be shocked to hear that you said insulin was actually a hormone, because again, I think the word gets tossed around, but the definition of the word doesn't necessarily get spoken to. And
yes.
How does a person get out of balance in regards to their hormone? Is it stressors? Is it medication? Is it the diet? What causes this to be imbalanced?
There are so many things that cause hormonal imbalance. I'll start with stress is a big one. Stress can definitely throw your hormones completely out of whack. They can also worsen what we call estrogen dominance. Stress can throw so many things, out of whack in your body and cause disease to progress. Then there's diet, of course. If you're eating a diet high in processed sugars and processed foods, you can severely interrupt the way that your hormones work. Even just being deficient in B6 will stop your estrogen receptors from functioning properly. You'll have estrogen docking there way too long and sending messages to the body that it doesn't need to be sent. Then there is, in addition to all of that, then we also have, I'm so sorry. Can you say the question again?
Yeah. And what are some of the symptoms that you see if someone has their hormones that are out balance? What would cause someone to say, hey, something is going on, maybe I need...
Related to women and their periods, right? So if someone is having estrogen dominance, they may have heavy bleeding, horrible PMS. They may also be diagnosed with fibroids, endometriosis, cysts in the breast, these kinds of things. Horrible pain on their cycle. Some women are also hormonally imbalanced in the sense that their progesterone is too low, so they're having insomnia, anxiety. Some women are also, let's say, androgen dominant, so they have issues with testosterone, too much testosterone or androgens. And so they will have a lack of period. They'll have struggles with fertility. They'll have male pattern baldness or even facial hair growth.
And you say that some people can get rid of these symptoms, right? How can they get rid of it? Do they just take something to balance the hormone? Can they get it in a pill? What should they do?
Right. So what happens right now when women go in and actually have conditions of hormonal imbalance is part of the problem that's driving no one's getting to healing, is that usually if you go to the doctor and say, I'm having these symptoms, they actually might prescribe you synthetic progestins or some form of birth control. And actually those birth controls actually increase hormonal imbalance. And I've seen it over and over and over again in my practice. And they cause so many issues. They cause fibroids to continue to grow. They cause people with PCOS to grow other things. Like I've seen people with PCOS and fibroids. This kind of weird, all kinds of things can happen in the body when you give it additional hormone instead of allowing it to balance naturally. But the way that you allow it to balance naturally is you deal with it holistically. So you have to look at it, diet. We use supplements as well. We also make sure that the person's lifestyle is not going to interrupt the flow of getting to balance, because if someone is stressed and they're doing all of the great things, they can still have totally imbalanced hormones.
Yeah. There was a news article recently saying that estrogen patches, that there are going to be a shortage of these things because of the uptake and the use that are currently being used. Would you see that getting worse over the years? And if it does get worse as far as this medication being available, what do you foresee happening for women in particular?
Yes. So there's basically unprecedented demand right now as far as women in menopause and just hormonally and generally. People are realizing the way that we've been approaching hormones has not actually really helped women. Women are still suffering. And right now, we actually really need more investment capital, venture capital to be going towards women health solutions in this space. And people are finally realizing that there's a huge market for this. And that's why there's a shortage, because there actually is not that much venture capital that goes towards women's health startups or women's health initiatives, women's health research. And so there's this void that really needs to be filled very, very fast over the next couple of years. The good news is there are different ways that you can take hormones, especially if you're dealing with menopause, perimenopause. You can take them vaginally. You can take them via patch. There is also oral, which I don't necessarily always recommend because it has to do a first pass through your gut and your liver. And it can also sometimes be risky depending on how your hormone replacement therapy is set up. But there are different ways to engage with hormone replacement therapy. And it really should be individualized to each woman. Every single woman is individual. Every single woman's hormones are unique, and they need to be tailored to you.
And speaking of the tailoring and keeping things balanced, if a woman is prescribed estrogen, for instance, is there anything that she should also take to keep that hormone in check?
Yes. So the progression of hormone therapy, we started out with a long time ago with just giving people estrogen that caused some problems because it was unopposed. Then they started doing estrogens and synthetic progestins. Synthetic progestins are also a problem. Those are also the synthetic hormones that are in birth control. And then we progressed to people understanding bioidentical hormones. These are the hormones that our body naturally recognizes a signal because they're exactly what our body is normally making. And that is really helpful. So when anyone is taking estrogen, you always want to have bioidentical progesterone to oppose it. I think of progesterone actually kind of like the police because it keeps the unchecked growth of estrogen under control. So it really helps that woman longer term. It also reduces the risk of so many things: cancer, stroke, blood clots, all of the things that were horrifying that initially made people stop hormone replacement therapy. I don't think those symptoms would have been there if they were using bioidentical progesterone in tandem with estrogen.
Huh. And in looking at your other interviews, in addition to perimenopause and menopause, you talked about other things causing hormones to be out of whack, from birth control pills, hair relaxers, consumption of dairy, even stress and traumatic events. Can you talk to us about how that mental thing, as far as stress and traumatic events and things like hair relaxers, how do they throw our hormones so out of whack that it causes our body to not function properly?
Well, the hair relaxers is a whole thing in itself, because hair relaxers, I would put that almost in the category of things that could disrupt our hormones, or endocrine disruptors. And what endocrine disruptors really are basically substances that can dock in the receptor where the natural hormone would go and pretend to be the hormone. They're imposters, right? And the endocrine disruptors are everywhere. They're in our cleaning products. They're in our makeup, they're in our, perfume, all of this stuff. But relaxers, in particularly, when you look at studies, like when young Black women are actually getting relaxers, they actually have an increased risk for fibroid diagnosis very early on in their life as a woman. And so it's very important that we start to understand that nothing that we put on our body, even in our heads, everything that we put on our body, including our heads, can actually affect our hormones. And so we need to be paying attention to everything.
Yeah, I think people sometimes forget that your skin is your largest organ of your body. So you put it on your hair, you put it on your scalp, it gets into your bloodstream. So if you're going to talk to the viewers and you're going to give them, 3 simple things that they can holistically do, naturally do, to get their hormones to stay as balanced as possible, what would those 3 tips be?
3 things only. I would start with diet. I would make sure that your diet is high in cruciferous vegetables, low in sugars, that it's not full of processed foods. You need to have adequate B6 and vitamin D. If you don't have either of those things, your hormones can get really out of whack, and it can also lead to the growth of things that you don't want. I would also manage your stress, and that's easier said than done. Obviously, we live in a very stressful world, right? But having a daily ritual that allows you to check in with yourself, calm down, do all the things. And I would be really careful with synthetic hormones. Honestly, I really think that after seeing thousands of intakes, I really feel that I just see a complete pattern of women who get on birth control. They're on it for 10 years. After that, they grow they realize I have 5 fibroids or I have 6 fibroids, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. And so synthetic hormones are actually, I believe, more dangerous than we believe. And I also believe that some of the hormonal crisis that we're actually dealing with right now, as far as the uptick in fibroids, endometriosis, all of these things are actually related to the heavy use of synthetic hormones.
I know viewers are probably listening and saying, okay, I have this. That's synthetic. If I have an IUD, does that include those people too, in your opinion?
Yeah, so the IUD is tricky. So I've had patients in the past with the IUD. If it's a copper IUD, copper opposes zinc, and I've had people get depressed because now they become zinc deficient. So they get depressed, their hair falls out, right? So there's a consequence for everything. And so it's just important to be aware. I think that, if you were on one of those and you were aware, you could also supplement, but medical professionals are usually not aware of the nutrition related consequences of these things. And so if you work with someone who understands it, they can also support you through that process.
Well, we thank you so much for joining us, Esosa. And I'm sure there are many people who are watching that just say, hey, where can we find you so we can follow you on social media and get some answers to these questions of how do I keep my hormones in balance?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram at The Raw Girl. Our business website is stayingagelesscoaching.com. And you can also, if you needed immediate answers to hormonal questions, go to askumi.com, askumi.com. And that is our new digital health platform that is powered by AI.
Askumi.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And up next, grab your boo and head to the altar. Yes, new research says that married adults have a lower risk of cancer than unmarried adults. We dive into this study from a medical and mental perspective. Stay with us.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just 2 millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
A 2026 study published in Cancer Research Communications found that never married adult men have a 68% higher risk of developing cancer compared to married adults, and 83% higher in women. While all never married individuals are at a higher risk, never married Black men in particular showed the highest overall cancer rates. Joining me now is Dr. Paul Harvey, a certified board internist. Hi, Dr. Harvey.
How you doing? Glad to be here.
Look, I know if there's a Black man that's listening right now who is not married, he said, like, what are we talking about? Can you talk to us about what this study means? If that marriage actually lowers cancer risk, or is it more about lifestyle factor modification?
Sure, we'll get into it. Well, some things we do know is that being married increases your survival risk and decreases your mortality risk. That's just being married alone. Now, recent studies, as you mentioned, suggest that there may be a correlation between being married and decreased cancer risk. There are several factors that I'll get into, but the recent study, like you mentioned, 83% of women and 68% of men, or 63% of men that aren't married, have an increased risk. There's what is called a SEER trial that was done in 2013. That was the largest trial they had, where they had roughly 1.2 million people and with cancer, and they went down to 10 most cancers, 10 most prominent cancers, and they divided them into married, unmarried, and widowed or divorced. And what they did find that they had the persons who were unmarried had cancers had metastasized, and they did not get the disease-directed therapy, and they often died sooner, and their survival rate were lower. Now, there are different factors for this. One was social factors, and the other one, behavior factors. I'll just give you some examples. Social factors, when the wife comes in and they can pray with you, they can take you to the doctor, they listen to you. If someone's at the doctor, you have another person there, a caregiver. If your mind is preoccupied with something else, they could take notes for you. And then there's just better mental health. We do know when persons are married, they have better mental health, less depression, they have someone to talk to, they're not lonely. And then economic stability is important, especially now with the economy as it is. If you have a support system with two people, you could afford to go get screening, you could afford to go get medications, you could afford to drive to the doctor, and so forth. And they're also behavior factors too. And the behavior factors are such as, if I'm at home coughing and my wife would say, oh, you need to go get that checked. There's something wrong with you. But if I wasn't married, like I've done in my 20s, early 30s, whatever, I cough, I just kept coughing. And you just keep coughing and never really go get it checked out. So that's one thing. Other behavior factors are smoking, drinking. You know, I don't want you smoking in the house. I don't want you drinking in the house. And they tend to smoke, drink, and have depression less. Other things are screening and better diet. So if the wife cooks for the parent, they usually cook together. If you have a meal with someone that's on their own, they just go out and eat. And you have more refined sugars, processed foods, and they also increase your risk for cancer, if that helps.
Yeah, I mean, I think that helps a lot. And, you know, there's data that shows that the disparity is even greater in certain groups, like older adults and never married Black men. What does that tell us about health equity and access to cancer and the prevention of all of this? Like, is there something that's missing for those two groups in particular? Right.
There are two reasons, and they both go back to social support too. Mm-hmm. So us as African Americans, we really don't have the social support that we get when, that our counterparts have. Also, too, the majority of times we go to the doctor, we tend to get, less, physicians seem to get less involved with people that on your socioeconomic platform, if I'm asking your question correctly.
Oh, yeah, you're doing fantastic.
Mm-hmm. What else?
One of the things that this study was between 2015 and 2022, and more than 62 million individuals aged 30 and over were included, with more than 4 million cancer cases being diagnosed. So if you're over 30 and you're not married and you're listening today, what should people be doing to stay healthy and lower their risk? What do you think they should be doing?
Well, It's several things. First of all, anything that helps your heart prevents cancer. So, and balanced diet, free of refined sugars, processed foods. Also, exercise, moving, stay moving. That's one of the most important things of combating cancer and decreasing your cancer risk. Also, smoking, very important. Alcohol, smoking may be the most important. Alcohol, and I would say if you're coming to the doctor and at the end and you're not married, one thing you want to do is access your social support. I mean, who do you have? Do you have an aunt? Do you have a cousin that can be there with you? And talk to family members that come with you. Hey, Aunt Shirley, whoever, can you come with me to the doctor? And then what's most important, a lot of people leave out, is get a social worker involved early. Get a care coordinator involved early. If you're going through something, get a care coordinator involved. They can send rides to your house, give you make sure you make your appointments, reminders, make sure you're taking your medicine, or just have somebody come by the house and just discuss your health care, talk to you, and that sort of thing.
Right. Now, I want to just keep in mind for the audience, this study does not say that if you're unmarried, you're going to get cancer. That is not what it's
absolutely.
saying. Right.
Absolutely not. You can do the same thing. You can be married and get cancer, and then you can be unmarried and get cancer. Right. I think one of the things they're showing is that as far as support system, when you do get cancer, a lot of times when you're married, you have someone that's going to be there with you. That's kind of the main thing. The main outcome is just the social support. I think all the studies that you mentioned, if they have one thing in common, is social support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know after this discussion, there's going to be people sitting at the dinner table. They're going to be mentioning, Dr. Harvey told me that we need to get married today.
Hey, and it depends on who you're married to now. Right. You might have married to one that's worse than the cancer.
Oh, no, not worse. Now, if someone needed to find those stats and facts to help present their case tonight as to why they should get married, how can they find you on social media, Dr. Harvey?
I'm on Facebook 123 at Med-South Associates.
All right. Mm-hmm. You heard it there, folks. Thank you, Dr. Harvey. We'll definitely have you back.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Right. Okay, we've heard what the medical doctor has to say. Still to come, we bring in a licensed therapist to discuss the mental part of being booed up. This study says it lowers the risk of cancer, while another study says invisible labor in marriage could stress a person out. You don't want to miss this discussion? Stay with us.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Before the break, we discussed a new study that says unmarried adults have a higher risk of developing cancer than married adults. We dived into the medical angle of the research. Now let's bring in licensed therapist Robin May to discuss the mental angle. Good to see you again, Robin.
Hi, Dr. Ebony. I am so excited about this conversation. If you know anything about marriage, I'm excited about.
Because you know, I love to talk about people and relationships. And from a mental health perspective, how might being unmarried, so we saw studies that said being unmarried or lack of social support can actually impact someone's overall physical health, including their cancer risk. How is that so?
Okay, so you said something just now that was so key to this. You said being unmarried or not having social support. So I am a little bit obsessed with the topic of marriage. I say that every time I come on Roland Martin. But what I want us to understand, if we really dive into that research is really saying or pointing to marriages that are relatively healthy, marriages that are relatively healthy. Now, we could spend some time. You guys are going to have to bring me back to define what a healthy marriage is. The research, if you keep going deeper into it, will show you that if a marriage is consistently contentious, if it's filled with trauma or drama, those people will fare just as low or maybe worse than unmarried adults. And so what happens is that when you are in relational community, when you are in healthy relationships, there's a built-in accountability. There is a built-in support system. There is somebody saying, did you take your medication? There's somebody saying, did you make that appointment? And that's the beauty of what happens in marriage. And that's why the research is saying that when someone is married, they tend to be healthier because they have that built-in support system.
They have that built in. And so for those who aren't, they say, okay, I'm not married, right? How can I build that social support system where I can have someone asking me if I take my medication? Is that all I need is an AI partner to get me through this next stage of life?
Okay, so I'm so glad, because here's the thing. What we don't want is people running to the altar saying, I don't want to be sick.
Right.
So I'm going to run to the altar. And so absolutely. Now, say this because I just have to. Network that's called IBelieveInMarriage.com. So I am not here to dispel or dismiss the power of marriage. I think it's the best thing since sliced bread. I still go with my boyfriend, although we've been together 30 years. He's still my boyfriend. So I want to make sure that we are not minimizing the power of marriage. But if you are not married, this does not mean saying I do automatically means you're going to be healthier. It's the health of your I do. So if you're not married, there are 4 things I want you to do. And this is, again, I'm coming from a clinical standpoint. I'm coming from being in the trenches with people, both married and unmarried. First thing I want you to do is build a team. And I mean a TEAM. I don't want you putting all of this weight of holding you accountable on one person. I want you to have a team. I want you to have your best friends. I want you to have your family. I want you to have maybe some relationships that you have built at work. I want you to have a team of people. So number 1, I want you to intentionally build your team. I call my team my advisory team. Those are the people who hold me accountable. Those are the people I have to be vulnerable with to tell my stuff so that they can know I need to go to the doctor. And then 2, don't just build a team. I want you to build a rhythm. What is the rhythm? How are you connecting with your team? How are you connecting with the people who you're doing life with? Build an intentional rhythm. So maybe it is once a month, I go to brunch with somebody. I wish I could pull out my phone, show you all my list. I have a brunch list. These are the people that once a month I have to reach out because we got to go to brunch. Another way that I build my own rhythm. I don't want anybody calling me, y'all. I don't like talking on the phone. But one thing I'm going to do is be on Marco Polo. I know I am 51 and I live on Marco Polo. But that's the way I can stay connected with my people, because most of y'all have an iPhone and I do Android, okay? And so we build a rhythm. So build a team, build a rhythm. Here's the third one. I want you to create structure in your life. So what does that mean? Get on a volunteer team. Find somewhere something you love and do that with a group of people where it is structured. Join a book club. Why is that important? Again, it's creating that consistent accountability. And then the last one, Dr. Ebony, I can't be a therapist and not say, get some counseling. Identify with a therapist. Find somebody that you can trust, that you can share your life with in a therapeutic standpoint, because that can also create that synergy that you need.
As an aside, what's Marco Polo?
Ebony, Dr. Okay. I'm not going to come on this internet and not call you Dr. Ebony.
Okay. I'm going to look that up. I'm going to research that. But now that we have you here, let's bring up another study that I thought was just so interesting. So there's research that reveals that women in marriages frequently carry a disproportionate mental load or invisible labor and manage about 60 to 80% of the household, from scheduling to emotional work. What does that do when we say, oh, let's get married? If I have to get married and I have to carry this on my back, does that necessarily have an impact on me, not only emotionally, but also physically?
So as you were saying, I hope you saw my facial expression, because Ebony, Dr. Ebony, I have committed my professional life to empowering women. and equipping couples. And that dynamic, particularly at this 18th year working as a therapist, has really began to collide in ways that surprise me. Because when I'm talking to women, there's a statement that I say over and over again, and it is this: I want you to pause and pay attention to your life. And the reason why I say that is because, again, if we lead into the research says, yes, that married couples tend to do better with their physical health. But research also says that men fare better in marriage much more than women do because of that invisible labor. So very quickly, invisible labor is basically the unseen weight that often women carry. It is all those decisions that we are having in our mind that's not necessarily on the calendar. When do I have to make my appointment? When has my husband made his appointment? Has my child made their appointment? Have we paid the dues for summer camp? We made sure that they had all their vaccinations. She was looking a little off. Is something going on with her friend group? Wait a minute, I forgot to send your mother her birthday card. Oh my God, what about the trip we're supposed to go on? All of these moving pieces is that invisible labor. And often women tend to be the one, and I know some of the fellas are going to say, hello, I'm thinking about those things too. But most often it is women keeping up with all of these tabs. Just imagine you have your computer open, and as women, we have about 10 tabs, way more than that going on. And that is weighing on us. We are carrying that. It is literally like you have your life, your everyday functioning, and then you take a backpack and you put 50 additional pounds in that backpack, you strap it on, and you're wearing it at all times.
At all times. And since we're going through the definition of invisible labor, can you also help us to define what is cognitive load versus emotional load? What's the difference between those two things, and how that might impact women as well?
Well, how I would define that is invisible labor is the umbrella, and those two dynamics are just underneath the umbrella of invisible labor. And so again, cognitive load are those many decisions that we are keeping up with at all times. And then the emotional load or the emotional weight are that very thing I said. I can really speak to this, Dr. Ebony, because I have 3 daughters. And there are things as a mother that I am tuned into, as a woman that I am tuned into, and I have a very active partner, but I promise you, he is not thinking about how long those braids have been in my daughter's hair and what that's going to do if she doesn't feel beautiful at school because that little boy she likes has been looking at her. But he's not thinking about all of that. And so those two things will go under the umbrella of invisible labor. So give an example of this that I have found that really helps people understand it. I just did a workshop this weekend at the church my husband and I pastor, and I gave this example. So when you think about invisible labor, whether it's cognitive or emotional load, I want you to think about this. Let's say my husband says, baby, I have planned this beautiful trip for us. We are leaving this weekend. I've taken care of all the details. Just pack your bag. He's going to be so excited, and I am immediately going to become anxious because I'm thinking about, is it hot or a cold trip? Do I need to keep this hair in, or do I need to get braids? Who's going to be watching the children? Who I am okay with watching the children may not be who you're okay with watching the children. Who's taking care of this responsibility? All of those things keeps us from being able to be fully in any moment at any time.
Oh, you just made me think about our trip coming up to Mexico, and I'm thinking how I'm going to get breast milk on the plane. And so when one partner, when they are carrying most of the planning and the responsibility, and we know that can lead to resentment, what advice do you give to couples how they can better share that responsibility? Or is it even possible? Are we just made different? Men are going to react one way, women are going to react another way, and we should just, I don't know, kind of accept our roles?
Ooh. No, ma'am. Dr. Ebony. No, ma'am. Not in this I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar century that I'm in. But okay, so to be very honest, I want to say this because this is a passion of mine. I think it is very dangerous for us to pit men against women, especially if our goal is a healthy marriage. Now, remember, how you define healthy may be different than how I define healthy. Folks can go to IBelieveInMarriage.com to get a definition that will help them. But when we talk about this, no, absolutely not. We were not created to carry that level of weight at all times. However, what happens, Dr. Ebony, and this is what's so nuanced, and this is what I'm often trying to encourage my ladies to remember. This is not about your husband not wanting to support, I hope. This is not about necessarily him being a bad guy. A lot of it is conditioning. A lot of it is what society suggests. A lot of it is what we saw our mama do, what we saw our grandmama do. Listen, I'm from Texas. What we saw our auntie do, it's what we saw the women in our life do. So that is the reason why I said earlier, I tell women, pause, pay attention, look at your life. Identify what is working, what isn't working. Find a therapist that's going to help you slow down and identify what are the things that you want to continue to own, that you want to be responsible for, and what are the things that you want your spouse to be responsible for. Don't make those decisions in isolation. Bring your spouse to the table and sit down and identify what are these dynamics that we are carrying and who is responsible for what. Now, here is the key. Once the two of you have identified that and you've agreed that I'm going to own this, you want to release any resentment you might have when you're in the trenches of that. Try it out for 90 days. Try it out for 6 months and have a preset time that the two of you are going to come back to the table and say, okay, this worked, this didn't work. I know, let me say this before I finish this. I know that can sound easier said than done, but who said that marriage is always easy? I know you may have a partner that may not be willing to do that. That's a different conversation, and I can help you with that too. But for those partners who are willing to both come to the table, that's the strategy.
That's the strategy. You make it sound so easy and so good. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Robin. Every time you're on here, I feel like I had a whole sermon. I'm not going to lie. That you are my new therapist. So how can people find you on social media if they want to say, hey, I know I need therapy. I may not have the finances or the time right now to devote to it, but I want to at least look at your posts and your threads. Where can they find you on social media?
So there are two different accounts that I live on. I have an issue with Instagram. I'm a little bit addicted. So if they go to Robin May Online, my name is spelled with May like the month, Robin May Online, or I believe _ in marriage. Both of those, I post daily resources and content that really helps you in your life.
Well, I tell you, we're going to definitely have you back because we need that episode on healthy marriages or what defines a healthy relationship. Because I think that defining that will help solve.
It's a game changer.
Exactly. Well, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And still to come, my prescription of the week. Stay with us.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
Let's talk about a hormone that gets a lot of attention, but not always the right kind, cortisol. So cortisol is often called the stress hormone, but it's actually essential for your body. It helps regulate blood pressure, blood sugar, metabolism, inflammation, and your sleep-wake cycle. The problem isn't cortisol itself. The problem is when it stays elevated for too long. When your body is under chronic stress, whether it's emotional, physical, or even lack of sleep, cortisol levels can remain high. And over time, that starts to show up in your body. So what are the signs? You may notice weight gain, especially around your abdomen, fatigue even after sleeping, difficulty sleeping or waking up in the middle of the night, brain fog or trouble concentrating, mood changes like irritability or anxiety, high blood pressure or blood sugars changing. And here's something people don't always connect to that cortisol, but it's skin changes. Elevated insulin and cortisol levels are often linked, and over time that can lead to things like skin tags and darkened skin and body folds like behind your neck, your knees, or in your armpits, acne, skin thinning, and in some cases, skin tags, especially around the neck armpits, or under the breast can sometimes be a sign of insulin resistance, which is oftentimes driven by chronic stress, improper sleep patterns, and metabolic imbalance. Now, to be clear, having a skin tag doesn't automatically mean that something is wrong. But when you start seeing patterns, your body may be giving you clues about what's happening internally. So how do you support healthy cortisol levels? Well, prioritize sleep. This is one of the biggest regulators. Move your body regularly. Manage stress with breathing, mindfulness, or time away from stimulation. Eat balanced meals to stabilize blood sugar, and stay connected. Social support lowers stress hormones. Because cortisol isn't the enemy, it's a signal. And when you learn how to regulate that signal, your body can shift from survival mode to healing mode. And that, my friends, is my prescription of the week. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next week on Second Opinion.